All right, this will be the last lecture then for the semester, Chapter 12, and it's on Ajax, Json, and Flickr. All right, and a couple things first. You might have guessed this already because I tend to show this kind of stuff. If you want to learn more about JSON than you're given in class here, as always, you can go out to W3 Schools. They've got a JSON tutorial. But mainly the idea behind this is that if you've got a web page and you need to refresh just part of the web page, you shouldn't have to refresh the whole page. You should only have to refresh the part that needs refreshing. What happened in the past, maybe 10 or more years ago, was whenever any part of the web page had to be refreshed, the whole page was refreshed. Sometimes what you would notice would be what was called Flickr, where basically the screen would just kind of go white for a second and then it would come back. Well, with Ajax, you only need to go and update the part that you need to update. All right. Now, I do want to mention something, and this is not a big thing, but I just did want to show it to you. And that is, for next semester, not for right now, but for next semester, there's going to be a couple of addresses that you're probably going to want to be familiar with. My guess is many of you will find what we did this semester as opposed to next semester. You might find some of the stuff next semester much easier to understand than what we did this semester. All right? But you may not. And the reason I'm telling you that is right now, what I just did was I went out to docs.microsoft.com. All right? And next semester, the class you're going to take is going to be a class in C#. All right? So if you go out here and somewhere over here they've got a search, and you type in, for example, C#, which is C with a pound sign, and you hit enter, they're going to come back. Notice it's 40,000 documents. All right? But the other thing I want you to know, and this is, if you go out to Microsoft.com, that's the Microsoft Developer Network. Doesn't look like much, but there are classes out there for free in just about anything you might be interested in. So it's the end of this class, and you're thinking, I really wish I would have learned more about jQuery. There's one out there. I wish I could have a jump start onto the C# that we're going to do in spring. It's out there. All right? So there's a lot of stuff out there. All right. So then, getting back to this, we first talk about how Ajax works. Ajax is an acronym. It stands for Asynchronous, JavaScript, and XML. When you've got something that's working asynchronously, you can start a job, kind of put it in the background, and you can start another job. That's the key to making the web work, is to be able to do things asynchronously. When you do things synchronously, you start something, you can't do anything else until that is stopped. All right? So if I'm running some kind of a job on my computer, whatever it is, and while that job's running, I can't do anything else with the computer, that means that job is running synchronously. That's not the way most computers work. For example, I've got this presentation up in the browser. I could, if I wanted to, I can also come in here and I could start up my calculator, etc. And all of those things can work at the same time because it works synchronously. Now, the other thing is, again, it's asynchronous, JavaScript, and XML. I may have talked XML before, I may not have. It's not really important. The important thing for you to understand is XML isn't used that much more with Ajax. Typically, JSON is used. JSON is JavaScript object notation. What I am going to do next week, you may or may not care, but what I'm going to do next week is I'm going to go out and do lectures on chapters 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. I'm not going to show those lectures in class. I'm going to do the lectures and I'm going to put them out on the YouTube channel. So if you want to know more about arrays, for example, chapter 16 in the book, chapter 13 in the book is working with numbers, strings, and dates. Chapter 14 in the book is working with control structures, exceptions, and regular expressions. Chapter 15 is working with browser, objects, cookies, and web storage. 16 is arrays. 17 is object-oriented JavaScript. And 18 is closures, IIFEs, the module pattern, and plugins. I may put those out there and no one may ever look at them, but I'm putting them out there for completeness sake. So I've then lectured on every chapter that's in the book, even the ones we don't have the time to cover. All right. So after an introduction to Ajax, we go into how to use the jQuery shorthand methods for Ajax. And you'll notice there is a load method, a get method, a post method, a get JSON method. And then we will look at the Ajax method in more depth and breadth of coverage. And finally end this with how to use Ajax with Flickr. And it's important that you at least understand the idea behind Ajax. All right? Even if you never do anything with it while you're here. They talk about what it is and actually what happened. I'm not a big history guy when it comes to this kind of stuff, but just to tell you is years ago, a good 10 or more years ago, somebody discovered that when stuff was being sent back and forth over the internet, that Microsoft had added this thing called an XML Httprequest object, also called an XHR object, that wasn't really being used very much. So what happened was, and now this is going on 20 or more years ago, something like that, I don't know, 10 to 20 years ago, there was a gentleman named Jesse James Garrett, and what Mr. Garrett realized was this could be used to do partial page refreshes. So he wrote this article, and it looks like it was about 13 or 14 years ago, called Ajax, A New Approach to Web Applications. And that's when Ajax kind of started. So he's kind of the father, parent, whatever you want to say, of Ajax. He's also a very different guy. If you look at him today, part of his head is shaved. Most of the rest of his hair is purple. So, and I don't know how old he is, but he's not like he's 20. He's more like he's 40 or older. But it's an article. I gave you the URL. Today I sent you an email that had that URL, and it's got the starter files for what we're going to go over in just a few minutes. So they show this pictorially on page 337 about what happens. Again, the big difference is it does what's called a partial page refresh versus a full page refresh. What the partial does, by only refreshing part of the page, ideally it's giving the user even more of an interactive feeling, and it's letting them know, hey, we're updating it on the fly here for you. All right? And again, even though the X that's in Ajax stands for XML, more often than not today, rather than XML, it uses JSON. And they mention websites like Google's Blogger, YouTube, Twitter, Flickr, they all use it. All right? They all provide APIs that let you use Ajax to get data from their sites. So the common formats, again, I want you to see this. See where it says XML data? XML is like HTML, except with XML, you make your own tags. There are probably 200 to 1,000 different XML languages that exist today. There could even be more than that. All right? So here's an example. This is a beginning tag, management. This is the ending tag, management. So management consists of team members. Each team member has a name, a title, and a bio. You can see that kind of stuff. part of the problem that arose when people started to use XML is they wanted to use XML and HTML together. Maybe you think, who cares? Well, think about it. Let's say that I'm a carpenter, and instead of team member, I want stuff about a table because I'm building a table. But the table might mean table like something like where my computer is on, or where your computers are on, or table might mean an HTML table. All right? So there were all sorts of problems with XML. Some of the languages, the different variants of XML, didn't talk well to one another. So, plus it looked weird. So they came up with JSON. And JSON, this may not look like anything to you. You might not understand it or anything else. But again, in your book, chapter 15, I think it is, 17, how to create and use your own objects, is on object-oriented JavaScript. JSON looks very similar to object-oriented JavaScript. So a lot of people like it for that reason. It's funny, if you go out to the website, the JSON website, json.org, it's, again, one of the ugliest sites you've ever seen. But it's functional in that it has links to everything you need to know about using JSON. All right. So I mentioned it all started with this XML HTTP request object. And these are the methods that you can run on that object and the properties of that object. Again, the idea is, I can't say this too many times, just refreshing part of the page. All right, I'm not going to go over these in any depth at all, just because of the fact that, again, you won't be tested on them. You're not expected to use them. All right, there are plenty of tutorials out there that if you wanted to try to implement them, you'd be able to. All right, as far as how to use it then, the stuff that's in here is pretty doggone heavy. All right, so what they're saying here is you click one of these buttons. So you click, for example, the Vector Corp Management Team. You click it and what comes up? Information about Agnes, the Vice President of Marketing. All right, you click it again and maybe the person who's underneath Agnes, their information comes up. But the idea is the only thing that changes on the screen is the text that appears right in here. That's the partial page refresh idea. All right, so it says how to use the jQuery shorthand, and these are the different methods that you end up using. There's a load method, which allows you to load data, a get method. By now, hopefully, you're starting to understand the difference between a get and a post. With a get, all right, a get is an accessor. It's showing you information. A post is allowing you to change information. So you notice it has both a get method and a post method and a get JSON method. It'll do some conversion for you. All right. Again, there are plenty of really cool programs out there that do this stuff. In fact, if you go look, I don't know if you've ever gone out, for example, to something like AccuWeather, all right, which gives you the current weather, and it'll give it to you either for the next several days, or it'll do it on an hour-by-hour basis, etc. Much of that stuff is constantly being refreshed, all right, because if they decide that in an hour from now it's going to start snowing, they want to let you know as soon as possible. Typically, they use something like Ajax to do that. Again, they discuss the difference between get and post. We've talked about it already. All right, so how do you use this load method? Not really a lot to it. There's not a lot of code. You set up your HTML, and you'll notice that, again, not a whole heck of a lot of jQuery that you have to write. All right. As it says, the load function can load constants from files on the same server. Well, it may be that if you do something like we looked at before in here, where you're going to change this, that each one of the things that goes in here is in its own file. And depending on the button you click here, it'll load a different file in here. All right? And you say it doesn't sound like much. It's not much. All right? Again, how to use the get JSON method to load JSON data. I have talked to Evan. I have talked to Paul about this. I think we should do a better job in this class. We should do a better job of giving you a week or 2 weeks where we go into a little bit of object-oriented JavaScript, and we talk about this in a little bit more depth and breadth of coverage, just so you see it. This isn't the kind of thing that you would be prepared after leaving this institution to walk in and start the next day. I'm not saying you couldn't do it, but you would need some additional training in order to be able to do it. So how to send data with an Ajax request. They show it to you right here. And again, the thing to realize is it's not much code. All right. And then they talk about serializing data. And it says it encodes a set as a string that can be used as a block parameter. So we're talking about chunking and then unchunking things as you send it, because you can only send so much information over the internet at any one time. jQuery has an Ajax method that's specifically used for you to be able to work with Ajax. These are the different options that you can use with it. All right. And again, the main reason that I'm going over this, I want to make sure you've at least heard the terminology. It's not at all impossible that you could go in for a job interview and somebody could ask you, Chase, have you ever done any work with Ajax? You could honestly say no, but we talked about it in class. Oh, what do you know about it? Well, it provides a partial page refresh, and jQuery has built-in methods that will allow you to do so. Well, then he's at least shown he's got a knowledge base. So if he's going to be hired into a company and that's his job, it's not like he's walking in there totally knowing nothing. And that was most of what I wanted to show you. They talk here about Flickr at the end of the chapter. It says, once you know how to use Ajax, you have the skills needed for getting data from popular websites like YouTube, Twitter, and Flickr. I don't know if you've ever heard of the term REST, R-E-S-T, and I don't mean like laying down and napping, but I'm talking about if you've ever gone out to a website and you bring up what are called REST feeds, where you're getting up-to-date information every couple minutes. Sometimes they'll do that in a college even if you've got an active shooter on campus where people can go on and look on their phones, etc., and see the status of something. All right. Other times, I mean, when you think about it, REST wasn't really that big then, but back when 9/11 happened in what, 2001, so like 17 years ago, you didn't really have REST. But the idea would be that you could have up-to-date every minute, you would have news feeds that would be coming up on screen. All right. And that's pretty much what they talk about in here. So you can grab Flickr feeds and you can grab whatever you want to grab from it. So again, it can be something as simple as going over a weather feed where you want to grab the most up-to-date information, all right, or it can be a lot more complex than that. And like I said, that's basically it. So just again, just to tell you that again, what I am going to be doing is we have gone over from the book here, chapters 1 through 7, I guess, in a lot of depth. Okay, we spent a lot of time on those. We didn't spend as much time, but we spent, some time, going over most of the material in chapters 8 through 12. All right? And like I said, next week, I'm going to come in, and Monday I'll probably do these two, then Tuesday, then Wednesday. But my goal is by Friday to have all 6 of those done. All right, so they'll be out there as well. Okay. I do want to mention too, just so you see this, and it's, believe me, this, what I'm about to show you, I should be more embarrassed about than proud. And that is, what I have done is on my YouTube channel, Evan from the St. Louis campus asked me about this, and he said, excuse me, he said, can you kind of do a key online for the Chapter 3 thing that you did? And I did. So I have made, there are lectures in here. There is a 6-part series that says the gym, JavaScript Hot 3 out of class, parts 1 through 6. Now, when I did it, I wanted this to be as generic, as vanilla, or whatever you want to call it, as possible. So what I've done, I have it in here, I think it's here, but we'll find out, is I've got your whole site in here. That said, I put absolutely no CSS in it. There's none. So here's the first page. There's the About page. There's the FAQ page. Well, this must be an old copy. The FAQ page doesn't work, and it's in. This is an old copy. All right. That must be from yesterday. Someplace in here, though, I've got a thing that's called the gym that I updated, and I don't know where I put it now. But I've gone over how to do every page that's in there. So if you're struggling with anything, you can take a look at that. All right. It's 8:52. Let's take a break. Let's come back at 5 after 9. And again, if you want to follow along with me, what I gave you this morning, what I emailed you, were a couple of the short exercises from chapters 8 through 10, and a couple of the extra exercises from chapters 8 to 10. I'm going to do the JavaScript, all right, which is what you have to do on there. So, you know, when you come back at 5 after 9, if you want to follow along, you'll be able to do so.